All right, we should be live. I can check, but I feel like we are. We're live. So,
Okay.
hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing the Faustathon, or end of the readathon live show, and all of my co-hosts are here. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Who
Who
wants
wants
to
to
go?
go first?
I'll go first. Hi, I'm Rainy. I am from Rainy Day Reads. That's about it. I like to read classics and cozy mysteries. So there you go. Those are my main two genres.
I'm Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I read kind of everything. Fantasy classics, middle grade, yeah. But lots of classics.
Yeah, I'll go. Pay from Attention, and yeah, I read a lot of classics. I've been gone for a while, but just recently started putting videos up again. So yeah, that's.
I'm Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf. I have a lot of varied interests when it comes to reading. And like I was just saying, I get really bored if I read too much at the same time, like always mysteries or always romance or always whatever. So I like to really keep my mouth all over the place when it comes to reading. And so it turns out to be, I'm not very narrowed, which I appreciate, but I love my classics. My classics tend to go through all of those genres too.
All right, I'll link everyone's channel down below. I know I haven't done that yet because I'm a poor head of the live show, but I will link to everyone's channel down below. Go follow them if you haven't. Hello, Tony. Once again, contacting us at 1 o'clock in the morning.
You're dedicated, man. Hopefully he has some good comments for us.
Yes, I know he read a lot.
Yes.
We were just saying before the live show, well, I'll tell you, I don't want to tattle on anyone else, but I did not finish anything because I was reading The Beast That Is Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus, and I'm only 200 pages in, and it's still at this point barely a Faust retelling. It's mostly him standing on his soapbox discussing music, and I love it. It doesn't need to be a Faust retelling. I do really love it, but I'm still reading that.
Well, that's understandable. That's a beast. So if you could read that in 2 weeks, I would have been like super impressed.
Yeah, 200 pages of Thomas Mann in 2 weeks is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's still pretty impressive. I finished Dr. Faust by Marlowe, and I'm only about halfway through A Picture of Dorian Gray, so I've kind of failed too, but I'm still going. I'm not done with it. I'm not going to stop reading it. I just haven't had a lot of time. But I thought
it's not a failure.
No,
it's
not a failure. It's still happening. And it's a reread, so. And his chapters are long. I did not realize how long every chapter was. I would listen to it for like 2 hours, and I'd get one chapter, pretty much a chapter and a half. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? Like, that's as long as like one of your plays, Oscar. Let's go. Let's move this along.
Were there a lot of similarities between the two, Rainy?
Between the Marlowe and yes, I would say so far. I'm not like super far into the Faust retelling, but where I'm at is Dorian Gray is starting to be more manipulated towards the dark side. So, and there's just a lot of all the characters around him. There's like kind of the good angel, bad angel kind of thing, like trying to sway him one way or the other, and what's he gonna pick to do, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's there are definitely a lot of similarities, and I know just from past readings, obviously it gets way more similar the farther in we go. So, but
I watched an old version of The Picture of Dorian Gray this week. It was from my library. I'm trying to figure out what year it was, but it was like 1940s probably. 1945.
nice.
So
Nice.
old. And I was very intrigued by the whole thing. It was very interesting.
I don't know that I've ever actually. I didn't have any time to like watch anything this week, but I don't know that I've ever actually seen a Picture of Dorian Gray on screen. I don't know. I can't remember. I can't recall ever seeing one. So I'll have to see if my library has that one or not.
There's one with Ben Barnes.
Oh,
Yes, that's more recent.
Yes.
My library had the old one.
Well, I'll just have to have a post Faust watch. I'm just going to put this out through the rest of the month here because I can't be done yet.
Yeah, I was as I was saying just before we went live, I'd forgotten how many similarities there are between. I read a Picture of Dorian Gray about 10 years ago, so my memory on that might not be as clear, but similarities between say Lord Henry and as acting as the intermediary between making that deal with Dorian Gray, but the most of the similarities, it was Sybil Vane and Gretchen from Goethe's Faust that are nearly identical characters. Including with the being a complete contrast to the main character. Of course, Sybil is the sweet innocent actress, and then Gretchen, of course, is more the innocent naturalist kind of character in Goethe's work, and both have, of course, very similar tragic endings, and they definitely could mirror perfectly there.
Yeah. At this point, Sybil is driving me insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I know things go badly for her, and I should feel bad for her. But right now, I'm like, you don't even know his name. You can't marry somebody whose name you don't know.
Definitely a red flag that you should catch earlier on.
Yeah, like, if the guy you want to marry says his name's Prince Charming, he's probably not.
As predicted, Tony finished quite a bit.
Yes. Dang.
He gave me the idea of putting some kind of nonfiction piece on the board if we do this again another year, which I thought was such a good idea.
Yeah. Maybe like if we do this again, we should like extend it to more than 2 weeks. That way we have more.
I mean, I thought it was a great chance, but I never spoke up. I was like, we could have just called it Faustus.
That's
like,
true. Faustus.
Could have been the whole month. And
that's true. Maybe next year. Well, because that way too, we wouldn't have to cram all of the Faust into 2 weeks, and that way, like, we wouldn't get bored with the same thing. So I'm a month-long readathon kind of girl.
I definitely noticed similarities as well because I read Marlowe's and I read Goethe's and I also read Rosemary's Baby, but then I watched Dorian Gray. So clearly I did too much Faust for my brain, but it was interesting to notice how all of them include like them tempting a woman and then she gets the fall for it. And I was like, not happy. I think it downed my rating for all three of them because I'm like, they all use the exact same trope except for Rosemary's Baby because that one did not have that. But unimpressed.
That goes all the way back to the Genesis story, right? With Adam and Eve, and being tempted, of course, by the serpent, in which, and again, once again, trading in a very naturalistic perspective for that of gaining knowledge, which is. I was interested in because you said Rosemary's Baby. I've never read that, and I didn't know much about it. I didn't even know that
It's
would
a
have been
Faust retelling from the other side of the coin, from the woman's perspective.
Huh. That's really interesting. I'm gonna have to. I've been meaning to read that for a while. In fact, last October. So I think I might have to give that another chance.
I feel like these last 2 weeks solidified to me that men are not good. Like, I know that's not reality, but all these books are like, men are awful towards the women they love. They're just awful. These ones, at least. I know it's not true, but in reality.
But if you were at a bitter stage of your life, this would be
you would really grab onto that. Especially Rosemary's Baby. That one, I think, pushed me over the edge at the beginning of being like, what are these men doing to these women they love? So, not impressed.
I almost feel, though, like with Picture of Dorian Gray, that did happen, but because Oscar Wilde is always so cynical about things and he's always making a social commentary, I almost feel like he's kind of not making fun. That's not the right word, but I don't really think that we're supposed to come away with thinking badly about the women. I feel like he's trying to say something about that mentality, but I don't know that like the movie version of that came across or not. But
I agree with that. And so does Gretchen in Faust gets redeemed and isn't looked at as such a the character in which she was originally portrayed as. So.
Yeah. I feel like, they get the bad end of the stick, but I think we're probably supposed to feel bad for them. So, hopefully.
In the Dorothy L. Sayers play, the woman is like totally different. Like, she still loves Faust and everything, but she's a much stronger character, maybe because it's written by a woman, possibly. But it's also, in the 20th century written, not earlier. So that's why.
I still want to read that. That's why I'm going to continue my Faustathon.
Yes. It was so good.
I still want to sit down and read that through.
Which one is that, Christy?
It's called Devil to Pay by Dorothy L. Sayers, and it's in her collection for Sacred Plays. And it's really good. It's like Faust is very different. He's more of like a reformer type. And I also watched the movie, it's like in 1927, I think it was made. The German movie by Murnau or something. I don't know how you pronounce his name. But similarly, Faust was like sympathetic in the beginning, where he wanted to help people, and he was like frustrated that God wasn't helping people and kind of doubting the goodness of God. And so that's how the devil ended up convincing him into getting the power. But I felt like the character development in the movie, the Murnau's Faust, was like so good, like better than any of the other versions of Faust that I read or anything. It was very convincing. In a black and white movie with no voices. It was just music. I was impressed.
Wow.
It was really beautiful.
Where did you find that?
It was on YouTube.
Okay.
I think somebody recommended it to me in my comments. It might have been Dia from...
Probably.
Yeah, I think it was Dia.
Dia had a Faust August.
Yes, she did.
was killing it. Now being that I never even thought about the Little Mermaid being a kind of a Faust version, and until she read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. I need to read that now.
That is very interesting. I have never heard that before in my life. And
Yeah.
now you said it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes sense.
Yep. She sells
I
her
was-
to Ursula.
I was reading something that was like reminiscent of Macbeth. And I don't remember what it was. I kept referencing Macbeth. I'm sure if I looked back on my vlogging for the week, I could find it. But it was like, this is so reminiscent. Like Macbeth is reminiscent of Faust. And I was like, because when I was reading it, it was like talking about the three witches and all these things. I was like, isn't that where he kind of like gives up everything just to become king? It's been a while since I've read Macbeth. So I was like, this seems too similar to just be like a coincidence.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that would make sense because he's kind of coerced by Lady Macbeth and a bunch of other people to, commit murders, and he just goes deeper and deeper down the hole until he can't get out again, and it's all because he wants power. And so I can see that. That would be a Faust retelling.
I wonder if there could be a comparison made with the three witches and the three angels found in the prologue of Goethe's Faust. And
Probably.
I'll have to go back and Macbeth and see what there is there.
Well, I mean, I haven't read Goethe's Faust, but the three witches in Macbeth, there's a lot of I want to say premonitioning, and that is not a word. What is
foretelling?
Yes. that he's going, that all the different things that are going to happen, and so if they kind of are telling him what's going to happen, that would probably be a definite. They're kind of leading him down that path because they tell him what's going to happen, but probably wouldn't need to happen if they wouldn't put it into his head.
I've been bad at keeping up with comments.
Uh-oh.
But Tony found Goethe's Faust a bit of a slog. I intended to start that this week, and I know I would like it. I know I would like part one, but I think translation is always an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really struggling to find an ebook with parts 1 and 2.
I think they were published so long apart. It seems like a German subscriber of mine told me the other day that most of the time you read part 1 and you never carry on with part 2.
Yeah.
They all need to be together in one to get you through.
This is a good question. And this is something we kind of mentioned prior to going live, that like when we want to tell somebody what a Faust story is, we just kind of say deal with the devil. But I've never really thought to break it down specifically and say what really qualifies as truly a Faustian retelling versus just a deal with the devil. Do y'all feel like there's any difference, or do you feel like Faust is a deal with the devil?
I mean, I always kind of looked at it that way, that any deal with the devil type of a thing could be a Faust retelling, but I'm sure there are like little nuanced differences. Like
they're probably predecessors.
Yeah, well, and I feel like with Faust, you have somebody that maybe has good intentions that slowly kind of goes down that path, whereas like maybe just a regular deal with the devil is more just like, I just want power, I just want money, this kind of thing. And it's not really like I started off maybe kind of good and I went downhill. Although I can't really remember Marlowe's Faust feeling like he was a good guy, even at the beginning. Like,
I'll say the same thing for Rosemary's Baby. Her husband is never a good guy, in my opinion.
he's trash.
Yeah. I kind
Men
of
are
wonder
trash.
if
Naomi.
I don't feel that way about the men in my life at all. But I think this book, like if you read so many of them back to back, it really can make you feel that way.
Yeah.
Because they all have the same narrative where they're using the women in their lives.
Mhm.
And just like, and for the ones who aren't married to them, so I'm not talking about Rosemary's Baby here, but they all were like, oh, I'm going to seduce this woman who I have feelings for, who I want to sleep with, but I'm not going to do anything beyond that, potentially. Like they might want to, but they don't actually. So it's kind of, it makes you think that way at least.
Mhm.
But I do wonder if maybe Faust like popularized the deal with the devil maybe genre or the trope. Like if that was the trope, like I'm sure there might be something before that, but if Faust made that a really cool idea.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And maybe there are certain character archetypes that turn up in each Faust retelling, but I don't have that clear enough in my head to judge. I'm trying to think, because this Thomas Mons is a weird one, just in terms of it being an actual Faust retelling. The girl who I'm going to assume is the main female character has given him syphilis. And that's why he thinks he's seeing things. And I guess we as the audience know he probably is, because this is a Faust retelling.
Mhm.
But this is just interesting. It's a very, very interesting book.
Yes.
I'm not selling it very well, but it's very good. I'll try it.
Yeah, well, at least with the Faust returns that I've read, the main characteristic was it wasn't just any kind of deal with the devil, but one that would take the individual outside of a natural understanding of the universe, trying overstepping their bounds in the pursuit of, well, in Goethe's case, knowledge, or in Picture of Dorian Gray, well, just overstepping nature in general. And it's whereas a lot of other deals with the devil, they're usually things that are attainable within the natural elements that we're combined to. But that's not the right word. But
Confined.
but yeah, confined. Thank you. Sorry. But with Faust, it is something that would be an impossibility, and it is something that's very different from even previous stories before Faust that make deals with the devil. Three immediately come to mind just from the Old and New Testament, that being, of course, Genesis, as mentioned earlier, Job, as well as the temptation of Christ. All three of these are kind of very Faustian tales, but they're still within the limits of human understanding. Whereas Faust and Picture of Dorian Gray, they go far beyond that, which in turn almost makes it a very optimistic story, because it's saying, well, you're not going to find happiness outside of what is limited to you, but within. Just stay in your bounds and you can find it there.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting, because in the Faust retellings, he always asks, for example, to like go to outer space, or the original Faust ones and stuff like that, which is like not something you could do in Elizabethan England. So
Right.
he wanted outsized things he really couldn't have.
He should have just asked to live like a really long life, and then he could go to the moon.
But then even when he was like asking for a woman he couldn't have, for example, it was like a trick of the demons and stuff like that. In the BBC play, I listened to it it's like an adaptation of the Christopher Marlowe play, and it was so funny when he thinks he's sleeping with Helen And then he like wakes up from his delusion, and it's with like a woman who was just sleeping with him, for money. She's like, "So do I get my money now?" And
Oh,
the
geez.
wake up was so great.
I
Was
hope
the hardest
somebody has written their dissertation on Christopher Marlowe's fixation on Helen of Troy, because she pops up in every single one of his plays. And I just want to know, I want to peek into the man's brain for a lot of reasons. But why Helen? Why are you so up on her? It's just interesting. Helen pops up a lot in Faustian retellings, though.
Yeah, she does in Goethe's as well. And I had something to say on that, and it'll come to, if it comes to me, I'll mention. But you're right. She is a very prominent character in these tellings, and I can't remember what I had. I did have something on that. It'll come to me.
You'll think of it. Yeah.
Well, she is beyond human understanding. Going back to your point, nobody can conceptualize what Helen would look like. She'd look different to each of us as the most beautiful woman in the world. So maybe that's why, like, conceptually, she could be a different person to each one of us. And also that is unattainable to the regular person.
She's the perfect woman in every way, shape, and form. And no one is perfect. So it doesn't work. And then maybe that's why they're all chasing after a Helen type.
And then he gets tired of her, even though she's perfect.
Because she's not perfect.
He's a man. Sorry, Kay.
Poor Kay.
It fits with the Faustian story, so I mean, I can't really argue here.
In the 1945 movie that I watched, it was just like the scene where he seduces Sybil Vane, and I'm like, oh goodness. And he's just like, I'm just gonna sit here and write my letter because I don't want to say goodbye. And he looks so like evil, but also like she's like, oh, okay, I'll come back. And I'm like, Dorian Gray. I was like, is that actual book? Because I don't remember that. Like, I haven't read it for several years, but I was like, I'm sure it would be if it's in there. So
clearly, I'm not to that part yet. So
and they might have also just done it that way to interpret the movie, but I was like, this is strange.
Oh.
I constantly forget that Faust was a real person.
I know, me too. But I went, like, why? What was his deal? What was the real person's deal? Why is he like the stuff of legend? That's what I want to know.
I know. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know, and going back to an earlier comment that Tony made, the translation of Walter Kaufman is a really great translation, and in that he has an introduction where he does get into a lot of the history of the actual the real person of Faust and who he was.
Okay.
I can't remember it too much, but I remember there being a section on that one. And it's also the best translation I've read of Faust if he's going to look for a new translation.
Okay.
I hope that's my translation.
So you always like the translations that are not the common one.
I like an old translation. I do. I'm a controversial person. She doesn't speak. So true. The ideal woman is also quiet, I guess, to the Elizabethan man. Don't get me started on this one, because this is me. My In Defense of Helen of Troy video will come next 5 years whenever I get up the energy for it. But yes, she is just the excuse. Hi, Christina.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hey, Christina.
You mentioned, Kay, that Job was kind of has Faustian vibes, and that is such a good point, because in the beginning of the Faust play, it's like it just screamed Job to me,
Oh, yeah.
like the angels and God and the devil all talking about
Yeah, yeah, it is very, very much the same in the sense that because in Goethe's I think it's the prologue where the devil does go straight to God and ask for permission, and God's just, well, you're never going to be able to get him, but yeah, go ahead and try. And it's yeah, Job is really the first thing that comes to mind, I think, when reading that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely, yeah. I didn't even think about that until you said that. Like, oh yeah, that's a perfect example. Luckily, it went differently for Job.
Yeah, he still lost everything, like all the Fausts
Oh
did.
yes, yeah, but he went the opposite direction in the end. Thank goodness.
At some point, we should talk about how the endings differ. But I don't know. Will people mind being spoiled? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, considering I'm not to the end of my book yet, I don't. That might be something for our discussion later on.
Okay.
I feel like there's an element of punishment, at least
Mhm.
at the end of most of these,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that
definitely,
kind of ties things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true. Every single one was different. Every single play or adaptation or whatever that I watched or read or listened to, it had a different ending as far as what they thought Faust earned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Goethe's, he Faust does get redeemed, but I like to pretend he didn't. I think that happens in the second part, and yeah, there were a lot of you mentioned earlier that a lot of people just say, well, you read the first, and then yeah, the second one does kind of seem to, it could have just not have happened.
Something must have happened to him that he decided to come back and change things a lot.
It's Goethe, so it's great writing, but it just doesn't really go with the original story. And I know he was writing it up to his death, and so I think you also mentioned it took him a long time. Yeah, it took him his whole life to complete, from the beginning of Faust to he worked on that his whole life.
I think it's interesting too how all of the different punishments are in different kinds of situations, like different kinds of people in their lives. Like, I don't know how that worked necessarily with other ones, but it was definitely interesting reading Rosemary's Baby and being like, she's the one who's suffering through it all because of the choices. Like when her pregnancy is not going well, it's like, maybe there's a reason. But the doctors are all like, no, it's fine. And she's like about to die of all this like tumor, like pain in her stomach. But it's just interesting to like have the perspective on the punishment from the other side of things, or the living development of it. I know there's a sequel to Rosemary's Baby, and I'm not going to pick it up. I think it's called Son of Rosemary or something. I'm good.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought there'd be a sequel.
There is.
There is.
I have not read it, and I probably will never, even though I love Ira Levin's work.
You need some nice light reading for a while, Naomi.
Yeah, like The Stepford Wives, also by
Yeah.
Ira Levin.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah.
I do like that, like, Picture of Dorian Gray. It still has enough of Oscar Wilde's wit and just like cynicism that, like, for somebody like me that likes sarcastic humor, it still is funny, even though it's a deal with the devil kind of thing. Because I felt like with the Marlowe one, it was just like everything was so upsetting, and like it just didn't get better for anybody. And and I mean, not that it gets better for anybody in Portrait of Dorian Gray, but it's just like it's just still witty to me. So I'm not like laughing out loud, but I'm chuckling and at different like social things that they talk about. I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Haha, good point, Lord Henry. Even though you're evil, good point.
It's fine. The Mephistopheles character is a perfect character for Oscar Wilde to write.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. If he was gonna write one novel, that was the novel to write, definitely.
Yeah.
Wish he would have written more novels, but
All of these seem to have been like beautifully written too.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That gives it like a very decadent quality. Well, that's why I'm only 200 pages in to Thomas Mellon's, is I have to go, oh my gosh, and then I have to highlight, and then I have to tab. Like if it was me live reading, it's just me going, somebody wrote this, somebody sat down, pen and paper, typed this out.
Why am I not this smart? Oh my gosh!
What was going on in his brain? Christopher Marlowe is the same for me. I know, Rainey, you have controversial opinions, but sometimes I like him a little bit more than Shakespeare.
Oh.
I don't want to admit it. Y'all didn't hear this from me. But
It's just only on the internet forever.
right. I really like his stuff.
A little piece of my heart
really
just died, but it's okay.
I say this with Shake Timber almost upon us.
I know, what the heck? All right, I understand. I'm supposed to convince Lukash that A Midsummer Night's Dream is Shakespeare's best play. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I mean, I think it is. I'm not saying it's his best, but it's my favorite. But
that's a good point that Toy and if I remember correctly, Milton's Paradise Lost came out about 10 years after Goethe's Faust, and yeah, it is the character of the devil actually, yeah, it does. I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, they do have very similar kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be
I
picking
kind of feel that
up
way
after this broadcast because I am a Don Milton fangirl.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder
feel
if
that
it's almost like
most...
I wonder
Go
if
ahead.
Faust books, if like the main character is the devil, not Faust.
Right.
Like if that's the perception on it, like we're told it's Faust, but at the same time, it's all about who his master is.
Yeah. See, that's definitely the case in Milton's Paradise Lost, and yeah, that kind of have to now want to reread it with that in mind.
That would be a good video
like
for
that.
you, Pay.
What'd you say?
I said that would be a good
Need
video for
ideas.
Pay to do. Do some
Oh,
comparison.
Yes. Okay, yes.
Well, now I'm gonna have to.
Oh, the
That'll be
pressure.
fun. I think it'll be fun.
This is one that I did not realize was a Faustian retelling until I saw a couple of people mention it in their TBRs. And this has been on my TBR for years. I don't know why I haven't picked up The Master and Margarita.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that?
Did you read that one?
Yeah.
I haven't yet. I had it possibly on my TBR, but I ended up reading The Devil and Tom Walker instead,
Oh, okay.
which was
I thought you had
excellent.
maybe started it, but
I've read like the very, very beginning, but I've been
Okay.
kind of moderned out for a year now, so I just haven't. I
understand.
feel like I need to be ready for the modern.
I understand that completely. But the most modern I can get is Victorian. After that, I'm like, yeah, it's too modern. Just stop talking. I was going to say, I
think
kind
it's
of
so
feel
hard to-
that way about Pittsburgh. Oh my gosh, picture of Dorian Gray, and their devil characters. Like, I don't feel like there's just one devil character in Picture of Dorian Gray. So, but I feel like they are the main characters, and like Dorian is just there being manipulated, but he is, even though he's the title character, I kind of feel like he's not really the main character until the end. But like everybody else around him is way more witty and wordy and just manipulative and like making him do things, and you want to see what they're going to make him do. So yeah, I feel like that's pretty much that. Maybe that's a characteristic of Faustian retellings, is that the devil is really the main character.
And a lot of them are plays as well. Not all of them, clearly. I'm surprised that Oscar Wilde wrote a novel instead of a play about it.
I know. I would have
maybe
liked to
because
have
it's so
seen that.
internalized.
Yeah, maybe.
Like because he has so much he's thinking, and we're always in Dorian's thoughts about like, you know, oh, the picture this and oh, the picture that. Like that would be really hard to translate to the screen, like to the stage, without having him constantly having monologues by himself in the corner, which might not translate well to his audience. I don't know.
True. Yeah, because most of his plays are like parlor room comedy kind of things, where all the ladies are talking about everybody else. So there's not a lot of internal dialogue. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen that as a play. I think it probably could have worked better than he might have thought, but maybe not with the internal monologue parts, but definitely with the witty banter parts. But
having a visible devil on the outside to talk to somebody into temptation, I think that's just a very that's a play kind of thing. That's not really a novel kind of thing,
right?
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, true.
And I think at a certain point in Picture of Dorian Gray, like the picture itself is the devil. Like once he hits that point where he's not like being manipulated by anyone else, he's just like, oh, I'm free to do whatever I want. And the picture is the devil that's like keeping tabs essentially. So it'd be really hard to do that. And then also the end scene in the Picture of Dorian Gray, which I won't say in case anyone's never read it and they don't want to be spoiled, but that'd be really hard to translate on stage too.
Yeah. Maybe not so much now, but yeah, way back then. It would have been
when he was writing plays.
Possible. Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll read before the end of the month. The Picture of Dorian Gray. It feels like Faustian's just going to keep going until the end of the month.
Yeah, probably will. Because none of us are done.
Oh, I'm done. I'm not touching anymore.
That's true. I'm out.
Love the time, but I'm out.
Did you black out your board?
Yes, I did.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Let's see. I read My Choice, and then I read Faust, and then I read Dr. Faustus. I watched The Picture of Dorian Gray. I didn't read a different version, but whatever you want to call it, they're all different versions.
Yeah, true. You did.
And then I listened to the audiobook of Dr. Faustus. So yeah, that was all of them.
Nice.
Wow.
I'm a completionist, if anything. Leaving things unfinished.
I kind of feel like my version of Faust I want to watch is just The Little Mermaid. felt like I could watch a Disney movie. I'd be like, I watched a Faust retelling. It's great.
I watched The Little Mermaid last Sunday. So I watched one.
You did it.
Yep, you did it.
Disney counts for everything. When it was Shakespeare, I watched Lion King, so I could say I watched a retelling.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, you can.
Disney comes in for everything.
Yep. Oh, that's what I'm gonna do in September. I'm gonna watch me some Lion King.
Perfect Hamlet, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're not technically reading Hamlet, but that's fine. Whatever. It'd be better for me than watching a retelling of, or a version of Coriolanus, because I'm not into all that war, death stuff. So
I watched the one that came out like with the shows must go on during COVID when they had all those free plays go up.
oh yeah.
And I watched their version with Tom Hiddleston in it
Ooh.
as Coriolanus. It was a fantastic version.
I could watch a play version. I'll have to go back on the Globe YouTube channel and see if I can find that. I just can't watch like actual movie blood and guts. I'm not into that. If I'm gonna watch it, I like it to be stylized on a stage where you don't actually see it. That's why I like, Shakespeare and Macbeth. There's no real blood. They just talk about it all the time.
There's an interesting book about that actually. So I'm on Shakespeare channel now.
Oh.
It's called Death by Shakespeare, and it's like all about how Shakespeare killed his people and if it was actually possible. But then it also talks about like why they didn't do a lot of onstage deaths and like how the culture would have been understanding of all these things and not wanting to wear costumes and whatever else. It's really interesting. So it's nonfiction by Catherine Harkup.
All right, I'm picking it up for September. That's
Death
my
by
nonfiction.
Death by Shakespeare?
Yep.
I didn't bring any paper with me. I'll remember. I'll remember it. If not, I'll be texting you.
Sounds good.
I mean, I basically have. Oh, okay. So this is still on the Shakespeare kick, but I need Shakespeare retellings recommendations, because I'm supposed to buddy read with somebody a retelling, and it doesn't matter what, but I just need like ideas, because I forget a lot of them and I have to research them, and then I'm like,
I read one recently, like July, but it was really cheesy and fun if you love Shakespeare.
Right. I like
I'll find it.
Okay. I'm sure I have a bunch, but in my Goodreads PBR, but I thought
Read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong.
That's a good one I've heard.
Okay.
It's really good. Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, nice.
1920s Shanghai. It doesn't get any better.
Oh, that does sound pretty good. Okay. Cool. Violent Delights. Okay. I have to, because I have to check in with my buddy. Oh, more specifically, because my play is A Midsummer Night's Dream that I'm doing. So I need to know if there are any retellings or, reimaginings of A Midsummer Night's Dream. If anybody knows of anything, let me know.
So I read For the Love of the Bard by Jessica Martin. And this one is about a town that is obsessed with Shakespeare. All of the streets are named Shakespeare names. All of the businesses are named Shakespeare names. Literally, one of them is called Taming of the Shoe, which is the shoe store. Like, that's the whole vibe of it. So super cheesy. And it's about this woman who comes back and ends up directing a 12th Night play. Although I'm not sure what play this would be a retelling of. It's just basically all about Shakespeare.
Okay.
For the Love of the Bard.
Love of the Bard. Okay. I just might have an entire Shakespeare month. I'm also doing a Shakespeare cross stitch, so
there's a wreck for you, Rainey.
Oh, I love squirrels. Okay, I'm gonna find that one too. Yay!
Tony also has one.
Oh, okay. The Great Night by Chris. Okay. It's retelling. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The Great Night. Okay. Yay.
This
So
was a
exciting.
very smooth segue, Rainey.
Right into
September.
We're fully
I just
distracted
took
from
over.
Faust now.
I took over the Faustian, and we're just talking about Shakespeare. I'm sorry. I'll stay in my lane. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's
think
hard to
they're
discuss
neighbors.
Faust. They
Yeah.
are. I feel like it's hard to discuss a lot of Faust without being like, well, they're all the same storyline generally, but also
Yeah.
then they're like, you can't really spoil the different endings unless you want to be like fully spoilered
Yeah.
or spoilery. So it's really hard to discuss the differences because it's like, well, you have to kind of talk in veiled terms.
Yeah. Well, the fact that Christopher Marlowe was a contemporary of Shakespeare, like it, smooth segue.
Yes.
And I have to get in my Shakespeare since Jen said she doesn't like him.
I do like him.
I know, I'm kidding.
I like the bloody ones and the
Okay.
histories.
Okay. I like the comedies, so
Christopher Marlowe's dark. I guess that's why I like him.
oh maybe. Yeah, that's probably true. I like some of the darker ones, but not the histories. I just cannot. Every time I read one, I'm like, I don't care about this anymore. It's kind of like how I am with a lot of nonfictions. I get so far into them, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I've read enough. This has been good. Okay. Not that Shakespeare's history are historically accurate at all, but so.
Well, is there anything y'all wanted to get to that you didn't? Anything on your TBR that you wish you could have gotten to?
I want to get to Dorothy L. Sayers because she's
Yeah,
in my
me too.
author jar that I pull from every month where I'm like, these are authors I want to read, but within, a reasonable amount of time, being like a few years at this point, based on how many I have. But I was hoping I'd pull her out this month so I could like purposely go for that one. And I just didn't want to read any more. But I was like, I wish I'd read Dorothy L. Sayers.
Yeah. Same. And I still will.
Maybe it's good. You'll have time to cool off about Faust, and then you can go to her with the fresh eyes.
Go back.
Yes.
I really wanted to finish Goethe's Faust because I got most of the way through part 1, but I was just struggling with it so much. Unless there's an ebook that I can get to have my iPad read to me while I'm reading, I just end up being very slow. And so I don't think I would have been able to finish it. So I just didn't even try.
Yeah.
But it was really good what I read of it. Like so quotable. More quotable than most of the other ones that I read.
That's the one I wish I read. I see how short it was. I'm like, oh, I can slam this out in an afternoon, and then it just never happened.
Yeah, that's what I did with Marlowe, and I realized I might as well not have even done that because I didn't obtain enough of it to if anyone asked me if I read it, I'm just gonna have to say no. I did because like I said, I was planning on rereading it before this, but just didn't have time.
Yeah.
There's like so much packed in there, and it's interesting because Marlowe was an atheist, and he's telling the story very Elizabethan type visuals of God and Satan and everything. So there's a lot to unpack about what he was really saying here.
Yeah, I think I'll reread it before we do our little discussion thingy because I read it for our sprints and then that was it. So I'm not sure I really retained much of it either. So. The very beginnings I did because I was really, really paying attention. And then towards the end of the reading sprints, I was like, not anymore. So.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Christy, because I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but we are planning on doing a discussion of Christopher Marlowe's
Yeah.
edition of this, but it will go up, I think, on Christy's channel. We're going to record it and put it up on your channel, Christy.
Yes.
All right.
I really still want to read the original Little Mermaid now that I know it's a Faustian retelling.
I've read it.
It's dark.
I read it this year
Yeah,
for
sounds good.
Buzzwordathon.
Very dark.
Okay.
I read it for Buzzwordathon when they had like size titled ones, and I'm like, oh, I'll just read Little Mermaid. No idea that
Yeah.
was. Yeah, but it makes sense completely,
Yeah.
especially at the ending of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hans Christian Andersen is another who was just going through it.
Yeah.
There's not a single one of his stories that's remotely happy. He
No.
was just a very depressed individual. I
Yeah.
don't know what was going on with him. But
I
The Little
have his
Match Girl,
collection.
read that at Christmas. If you need to cry, read The Little Match Girl.
Oh geez.
The
No.
Tin Soldier.
I
There
have
are
this collection, and anytime I need to read them for a prompt for like a readathon or something, I'm like, ooh, which one of Anderson's books will count for this one? And then it's like a little 10-minute story, which is still
Yeah.
sad as anything, but still.
The Tinderbox is good. The Tinderbox is my favorite by him. And it's not too sad.
It's funny how sad his stories so often are, and yet how many of them have been adapted to as very happy kind of
Mhm.
more upbeat stories. So somebody just read this and said, "I'm just going to do the complete opposite of everything he ever did."
Right.
The Grimm brothers too.
Yeah, I was going to say the Grimm brothers as well. That's
Yeah,
I
people
always think
that
it's funny how
don't know-
fairy tales are meant to be happy for kids. It's like fairy tales are warning signs. Like they were not, walk down the street and pick flowers. It's like avoid the street for your life's sake. That was kind of the point of it.
Yeah, people in my real life that don't know, like, more literature-based stuff, and I tell them, like, say, if we're going to see Into the Woods, the musical Into the Woods, I'm like, now, these are, like, the original Grimm Brothers retellings, so, like, don't be, or not retellings, but the original Grimm Brothers, and so don't, like, be all, this is going to end happy. It doesn't. Like, I'm just warning you now. They're like, by the end of it, they're like, what was that?
The true story.
Yeah, the true story.
I feel bad. I watched it with my mother-in-law and may have traumatized her a bit.
Oh no. Oh no, poor Melanie.
She was not
Oh no,
ready.
your mother-in-law. Okay.
Yeah, not my mom. I knew not to watch it with my mom. She would
Yeah.
not been happy with me.
No. I actually haven't watched the recent movie version, but I've watched like
It
the
is better.
yeah.
Although
I should
Victoria
watch.
still likes the music.
Yeah.
So I guess that's good.
I love the music. That's my favorite part.
What's
Oh,
the best version to read this? I guess that depends on what you are looking for.
Mhm.
Or are you specifically referring to like Christopher Marlowe's, for example? Let us know.
Oh.
Because I think it would depend kind of on what you're looking for. If you're just looking for like a general Faust retelling.
Yeah.
Like there are short stories that you could just dip into it. There's
Mhm.
the original stuff with like beautiful but more difficult language, and then there's like really modern stuff like Rosemary's Baby and Addie LaRue and stuff.
Oh yeah, we didn't read Addie LaRue. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. I was not going to reread it. I read it in March for my book
Yeah.
club, so I was like, it's been recent enough. I don't want to reread it, but it's still fresh in my mind. That's a great one. I really enjoyed that one. The twist on it being like the Faust character being a young, like 17, 18-year-old girl
Mhm.
who never can get old.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I saw that one at the bookstore I was recently at. I was like, I should get this one. I'm never going to read it in 2 weeks.
I I also really love the ending of Addie LaRue's Faust journey. So
I do too.
that's a really great ending, I think.
Nice. I'll have to look into that one more. I don't know. Like whenever it first came out, I was hearing all kinds of mixed things. So I was like, maybe I don't know. I'll wait on this one, I guess. But now with the Faustian thing in me, now I really want to read it.
It's so good, Rainey. I feel like you'd really like it because
Okay.
there's like a meditation on like art and how you don't pull from just one source of inspiration, right? Multiple things can influence you in composing art, and it's really big on loneliness.
Okay.
So if you're feeling down,
Yeah.
it might not be the best one, but
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's
read it
the
all the
only book of hers
day.
I've ever truly loved.
Okay. I'll have to definitely get that one then.
All right. Well, we've hit an hour.
We
How
did
are
it.
we feeling? We did it.
Yeah.
The readathon is complete. Some of us will still be working on our reads.
I mean, you have tonight.
Yeah.
Well, we do have tonight. Maybe I can read Goda's tonight.
How many more pages do you have of yours?
Don't ask. It's best we don't know.
Okay. You can do it tonight. What else do you have to do? Maybe I'll try to finish Picture of Dorian Gray tonight. So I was listening to it. I think part of my problem why I didn't get it done is that I don't like the audiobook version that I have. So I should just change the audiobook version that I have and just like start off from where this one left off. But it's unscripted.
YouTube might have a good version to listen to as well.
Yeah, that's true. I always forget about
Sometimes I have them.
Yeah. I always forget about YouTube audiobooks, and then if I can't find them on Scribd, then I'm like, no, I'm gonna have to buy the book. And then somebody's like, no, YouTube. I'm like, that's right. So yeah. We can do it. We can finish our books.
We can do it.
Yeah. We have a few days, it's fine. Before we have to start all the
Naomi's
Shakespeare.
like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm looking at
She
this for
finished.
another year.
Yeah.
She's the
It was
MVP
great
of
to
this
read
week.
something like that, though. I enjoyed reading them all, but I was just like, at a certain point, like I said, I get bored. I get bored of the same predictable plot, even if it might be a little different.
Yeah.
So I had to find greener pastures like Agatha Christie and other things.
Understandable.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us all tonight. I will link to everyone's channel down below, like I said, and look out too for our discussion of Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus over on Christie's channel. But I think we'll call it a night.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
Sounds
good.
good.
Thank you so much for hosting this, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
anytime.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Bye, all.
All right.
Bye.